In the late 1800s, Harvard had a legendary Swiss-born science professor and biologist named Louis Agassiz. Agassiz was famous for two things: founding Harvard's first real science school and tormenting his students with the world's most agonizing homework assignment. Imagine being a young ecology student and walking into Agassiz's lab, expecting microscopes, dissection tools, and exotic specimens to examine, like jeweled beetles and colorful African birds. Except instead, Agassiz looks you up and down, smiles, and hands you one dead fish in a jar. Then the professor tells you, in his amused Swedish accent, "Look at the fish. I'll be back later." No other instructions, no magnifying glass, just look at the fish. Hours pass, then days, eventually weeks. The professor checks in on you from time to time, but every time Agassiz comes back, he asks you for new details about your dead fish. And every time, Agassiz shakes his head and tells you, "Look again." It sounds ridiculous, but here's what Agassiz is really teaching. Curiosity isn't a natural spark you're born with. It's a discipline, an active practice. By the end, Agassiz's students would learn to uncover entire patterns, structures, and principles they never would have noticed if they had simply stopped at first glance. Agassiz's students needed to move past their natural surface curiosity and to learn to become excited by the process itself. To understand why Louis Agassiz tormented his students with a single dead fish, you have to understand who the man was. In the late 1800s, Agassiz was not just a professor, he was a scientific celebrity. Swiss-born, Harvard-appointed, and internationally respected. He founded what would become the Lawrence Scientific School, the seat of Harvard's modern science programs. But there was something odd about him. He didn't believe science started with thinking. He believed it started with seeing. It begins with a young student, Samuel Scudder, an aspiring entomologist. Scudder walks into Agassiz's lab expecting the usual trappings of science, tools, microscopes, a tidy tray of beetles. Instead, Agassiz reaches into a grimy jar of alcohol, plucks out a soggy, pale fish, slaps it on a tin tray and says, "Take this, look at it. I'll be back later." This wasn't a joke. This was the assignment. The jar smelled like Victorian sewer. The fish was unremarkable, not exotic, not colorful, not rare. And the instructions were intentionally vague. Scudder wasn't allowed instruments, no magnifying glass, no dissection, just his eyes, his hands, and the dead fish. Within 10 minutes, Scudder is convinced that he has seen everything there is to see. But when he tries to report back, Agassiz is already gone. Hours pass. The fish dries out. Scudder panics, wets it again, stares at it, flips it over, counts the scales, pokes its throat, gets increasingly desperate. At length, he escapes the lab, only to find the fish waiting for him on his return. Unchanged, unblinking, merciless. He spends the rest of the day trapped in his forced observation, the academic version of solitary confinement. By the next morning, Agassiz reappears and asks, "Well, what did you see?" Scudder gives him his answer, and Agassiz shakes his head. "Look again." This continues for days, then weeks. Scudder describes the emotional arc like a psychological thriller. Boredom, frustration, ego collapse, hallucination-level detail awareness, and finally, revelation. Because eventually something strange happened. The fish stops being a fish. It becomes a system. Scudder starts to see symmetry between the left and right sides. He sees the structure of its fins, how its mouth is shaped for a particular kind of feeding, the arrangement of its gill arches, and the subtle curvature of its spine, the patterning of its lateral line. He sees how the fish fits into a family of similar species, a shared blueprint stitching through nature. And Agassiz's lesson becomes clear. Facts are stupid things, he would say, until brought into connection with some general law. In other words, anyone can memorize facts. Curiosity is connecting them. It's the discipline of looking long enough that the surface details dissolve and the underlying structure reveals itself. When Scudder finally demonstrates real understanding, Agassiz ups the stakes. He hands him a second fish, then a third, then an entire family of species, all related, all slightly different. Now Scudder's job is to compare them. What features are shared? Which ones diverge? Which pattern hold across the whole lineage? This wasn't about the fish. It was about training the scientific mind. Before ecological modeling, scientists had one reliable tool, the trained eye. And Agassiz trained his students' eyes better than anyone. Many of them, including Scudder, will go on to shape American science for decades. They were known for a distinctive intellectual toughness, the ability to notice what others missed, to sit with a problem longer than comfort allowed, to resist the rush towards premature conclusions. They didn't learn that from lectures. They learned that from the fish.
When you asked, like, can you teach curiosity? I could not for the life of me think of a story that would work. Like the reason why this is written clever is because I was just so damn happy to find a story that was like, oh, this is exactly how you teach curiosity. Like there isn't a better example than this guy. So have you had this experience in your life? Have you ever had somebody, when you were interested in something, like, you know, I was tough to teach. I was not a great student, despite, you know, how much I research now. And it really, I had that moment. I had somebody pull me aside and they saw what I was interested in and made me do the research myself. They made me learn it because I had an interest. And I was wondering if you've had that experience.
I have, and this is kind of the thing we talked about. We did the episode on homeschooling and stuff, and I was thinking of all the things that parenting skills and just self-help and self-aware things. And I'm thinking, how do you teach somebody to care? You know, just to be interested and kind of geek out on something that's not mainstream, like, you know, a race car, you know, or a sport. And I think it's exposure. And I think it's when you're exposed and you show that spark. I'm going back to the homeschool thing. I think a lot of times at school, when you ask questions to your parents, you get ignored a lot, especially from our generation. But when you get that really good teacher who sees that spark and then encourages you, kind of feeds that fire. And I've had that happen all through my life. So stuff that I thought was just cool, but I was only one in the room. The teacher would take me aside and have me do a paper on it. And I told you that when I was a kid, the Komodo dragons was a big one.
Yeah.
And I still remember the teacher and that she thought that was cool. And then I thought it was okay to talk about it. So it didn't just get covered up with a blanket. What about you?
The Komodo dragons is a good example. Like that is, I remember that coming up on an episode. I think our last one. For me, I was interested in the game Mortal Kombat when I was so young. I was like tiny Joe with a Sega Genesis, and I was trying to learn all the fighting moves of all the characters because they all have a special move called a finisher. And my uncle, I was trying to be like, hey, how do I get this information out? Because like, what am I going to do? Write these down on a piece of paper and hand it out at elementary school? Like how am I going to distribute this so that I have more people to fight in this game?
This is going to make the world a better place, people.
It will. Yeah. Like if everybody plays Mortal Kombat as well as I do,
but it does, right? It's going to bring up the level of play for
Right.
gaming. Yeah.
So what he did is he walked me through the process of making my very first website. And this was back when there weren't templates. So like he tried to teach me HTML so that I could make a website with like it had pictures, it had pictures of the
Wow.
fighters and like a little description of what their move was. And he used curiosity to get me to do that.
How
Now
old
I
were you?
oh crap, I think I was 10. Like it was
Isn't that cool that he
it
would
was
do that
very
though?
early.
That he would give you that part of his time, right?
Very patiently, yes. And he set up a second computer because he was a programmer, and that was it. Is it was just like he's like, okay, you want to work on your Mortal Kombat site today, and so I would just sit there, and he would very patiently be like, okay, look at the code from this, adjust it slightly, make it work for yours, and I'd work on it some, and then I'd come back and be like, the image isn't loading, and he's like, okay, well, let's look at your lines of code. So like it was a lot like this process. And I'm realizing now that your Komodo dragon story and my coding story early on, those are evidence that curiosity based, learning works very, very well. But the problem is like I've met the opposite. Like, have you ever met like the kids of friends and you're just like, oh my God, you are not just a terror of a child, you're running the house, but also you're the least curious child I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
I've met kids where it's like all they do is play on a tablet and they don't ask questions about anything in the world. They don't seem to care about anything. They're just like, give me dinosaur chicken nuggets and let me play my tablet games.
You sound like you're describing my family.
I'm sorry.
Their answer to everything, that if you bring up anything that you think is interesting that you read or thought, even they'll say something like, well, I don't know if that's true. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're just like, again, they just don't even want to have a conversation and say, well, how they thought or the experience that they've, you know what I mean? That's what you're searching for. You want some kind of, let's give this car some rubber, get some tires on it. But they're just like, nope. Well, it depends,
Yeah.
Like they're allergic to learning. They don't want to think beyond eating and pooping. Deep as a puddle, I say.
Yeah. That is I don't know about that. That is such a great example of intentionally uncurious. Another one that my parents used to use was, that sounds like a question for politicians. Like their excuse for not learning anything about politics is they would just say that sounds like a question for, and then put it in there. Like if you want to learn about, if you're like, I think there's something, like isn't it weird that like my neck has little swells in it, and it's like, well, that sounds like a question for the doctor. So like it was exactly what you're saying. It's almost a pride in not being too curious in things that don't concern you or won't benefit you. And I think that's it. I think that part of not having curiosity is you don't think the thing you're learning will ever have a benefit. And then you also sort of like don't want to get out of your lane because it takes mental effort. Like it really does burn calories and it hurts sometimes.
Well, it does, and I think it does hurt. Both of our examples were me, about this animal that was, 10,000 miles away from me, and you about coding. We had somebody that kind of didn't make it so hard that we'd give up. Something so difficult. If you were to look at a chessboard with no guidance or no explanation, you'd give up eventually because it'd be just too difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you need that person like the Professor Agassiz, right? To
Right.
bridge this and give it a little shove.
So I guess the first question we should probably start with is, why teach curiosity if there isn't an apparent benefit? It's a very, very silly question to ask on a podcast where, we come together every other week to talk about very deep subjects. But it is a good question. It's why did my, uncurious family just settle with, that sounds like a question for politicians. That sounds like a question for college professors. Or that, why is that uncuriousness even there in the first place? And my,
go ahead.
Oh no, please, I'd like to hear yours first.
I know why it's valuable.
Why is that?
Because people who know a lot about a little are very, very valuable. And I'll give you an example. The boxer, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, who was 80s, he held multiple titles in the middleweight division. And what they used to say about him is that, and he fought Tommy Hearns, he fought Sugar Ray Leonard multiple times. He's an amazing fighter. He's from the Boston area. If you cut open his brain, it was going to be a boxing glove. All he wanted to talk about and all he'd ever done and cared about was boxing. Now, he wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the toughest, but he was so curious about boxing his whole 61 years that he lived. And that's what curiosity does. The specialists, the leaders are curious.
Yeah. I think that is probably the biggest separator, because I think what people are going to assume is that, you know, if your family isn't curious, if you meet somebody who is not curious but they have a job, it must mean that they are dedicating their brain to that job. Like, this person is not curious about politics because, you know, they must have been damn good at driving their delivery truck. Like, they knew the miles to the gallon. They knew how to, like, maximize wind shear against their windshield and how to make their deliveries very fast. There is an element of that. There's an element of, you don't have to be curious if you've already got a job that sustains you and it's been working for years. But in reality, I think what you're saying is more true, which is there's always room for more curiosity. And not only that, it will make you infinitely better at what you do. It's not just you get trained for your factory assembly line work, or you get trained to use this, you know, spreadsheet and you add numbers to it depending on what your boss says. If you get curious about the business around you and the company and, you know, why am I doing this? Where does it fit in the grand scheme of things? That's how you elevate yourself very quickly in life. Like, that's how people see that curiosity.
In my corporate, when I was in banking, you're absolutely right. The people that showed genuine interest for how everything worked in the office, the funding side, the sales side, those were the people that got promoted. Those are the people that now are wealthy and well-to-do, because and it was a genuine interest. It wasn't, I think it can sometimes get dismissed as being kissing up or, you know, playing the game. But people are agreeable who don't we all like, aren't we all flattered when someone listens to us?
Yes.
I also think it's attractive. I think when someone has a genuine interest in something unique, it's just very attractive.
Oh God, yes. Like you can be around somebody and they can be very boring and dull and not a great conversationalist. But if you find out they have a real passion for something crazy or interesting, like, it's like, oh, you're a person. You have deep thoughts and you have curiosity in this. Yeah.
I used to work with this guy, and he was so introverted. He was so quiet and shy. He would never make eye contact with you. And he was an Asian. He was Chinese, but he was born here. He was just painfully shy to the point where he's kind of an outcast. But I found out that he competed in breakdancing competitions all over the world. Well, just what you said, I was shocked. And I looked at him differently, and I invited him to lunch, and he had great stories. But like you said, it was a 180. I saw him as this totally, because he was a different person.
That is a perfect example. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're sitting down to lunch and you're like, one person is an expert at their very dull office job, and the other person is like, well, I am extraordinarily shy, but I break dance all across the world. Who are you going to talk to? The guy that's curious about breakdancing and pushed himself into it because it's you know, it holds his interest. So yeah, let's start with, not only does curiosity make you a sharper, faster learner. If you're not a curious person by nature, that is okay. You can train yourself to be, and with very little effort. Like we're gonna start with that. Is if you're like, well, you know, I've never learned math, or I've never learned these boring subjects, or even our opening subject where we're talking about examining dead fish for the sake of ecology, and you're like, that sounds like terror. Like, I'd rather pull out my own teeth than do something that boring. We can train you to find it interesting, but not only that, if we find the thing you're already interested in, there's a very no-duh statement, but we can get you curious about stuff in a way where you can learn it fast. That's kind of the goal of curiosity. Is you can take a boring subject and you can take a boring field and you can look at it in a way where it makes it deeply interesting. That is actually really honestly the bigger trick to learning. It's not having a mega IQ. Like we've covered IQ many times on the show. I'm almost kind of tired of like, yeah, IQ doesn't mean anything. You could take somebody who's mega brainy, and they will learn slower than you if you find a way to be curious about it. I'm completely convinced of that. After reading, we're going to link our articles. We've got an article from Scientific American, how the science of curiosity boosts learning. We've got one from Psychology Today. It's the psychology and neuroscience of curiosity. You will outperform actual literal geniuses in learning if you become curious about a subject and if you can train yourself to become curious. So don't let your kids just become, a dino nugget eating, iPad dwelling children who don't have curiosity. You can get them interested in, a video game and then have them program a website to support that video game. Like, honestly, there's things that already do this model. Have you heard of Roblox, the game?
No, what is that?
It is a very, very, very wildly popular video game for 12 and under, I believe. So kids play it, and they play it to an extreme that like parents of kids who play Roblox are sick of it. They're like, this is the worst thing on earth. It looks like Lego. It plays kind of like Fortnite, where there's multiple different game modes. And the kids who play it will learn how to make levels and like in-game environments. Like they will practically become coders, and they will practically become like game designers to learn how to make their own house or their own environment or their own level or their own load-in zone in that game. So like you can use curiosity to juice that. And not only that, Robux themselves, they give out Roblox give out Robux, which are basically fake in-game currency, to the people who build these levels. So they basically take kids who get interested and build stuff.
Well, that's interesting.
And then when it opens up to the public, the kids earn fake money for doing this. So like, and it supports their game ecosystem.
It's like child labor. It's great.
It is you joke. That is exactly what it is. It is paying them to build out their game for them and expand
Money,
it.
with quotes, right?
So there are game systems who have learned to harness children's curiosity to build out their environments, which is completely crazy to think about. But so we're going to walk you through the process of curiosity, how it works on the brain, and how it primes you to be super smart in very niche small areas. And if that ends up with you having a boxing glove for a brain, then that just means that you followed that particular interest and curiosity, to the end that you could. So we'll start with basically the mechanics of it. So if you show people trivia, like if I hand you 5 questions, Todd, and it's all trivia about Komodo dragons, before you hear the answers, before you know the answer, the caudate nucleus and the midbrain light up. Like those are the dopamine circuits. So like the parts of your brain that give you a dope reward, they flash before you hear the answer.
So that's what the third grade teacher sees in those kids who can't hold it back. They just that eye. It's an actual physical.
When I am drunk and slurring at a bar and we're doing bar trivia, and they're like, "Who did the intro music to the Friends, show?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and I like, but then I don't answer because I'm like, "Oh, wait a second, I almost know this one." That's because I just got a massive dose of dopamine into my brain for thinking about it and being curious and having it be familiar to me, but not actually knowing the answer.
Isn't that what Jeopardy does?
It is 100. No, I'm so glad you mentioned Jeopardy. That is 100% how Jeopardy is structured. It's getting you to almost know the answer. That's why the questions are easy. The questions feel easy. Let me put it that way. But the answer is oftentimes elusive. Finding that sweet spot and asking a question that is just barely not known, but then making it to where, like, if you think you're like, if I think hard enough, I can pull this out. I have parts of this in my brain. That sweet spot is where you get the most dopamine. That is where you get the curiosity reward. So, your brain lights up right before you know the answer and in anticipation of the answer. The anticipation is the important part. It's like when I hold a treat in front of my cat, hit the height of dopamine, the height of his anticipation is before the treat. Once he gets it, he's like, oh, nummy, 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 eats it, done. Same thing with us in trivia. Like if we learn something, it's like, oh, cool, that's awesome, done. And then it doesn't really come back again until we talk to each other on this podcast, or I go to my friend and I'm like, hey, I learned this neat thing at trivia night. Let me tell you about my facts. So it's really the anticipation right before you learn, where your curiosity is at its peak and your dopamine is at its peak. That reward is what you want to hijack, and that's what you want to take with you into other locations in your life. That's where you want to, like, if you can apply that hit of dopamine right before you learn something interesting, if you could apply that to anything at work, you will become an expert at work pretty much overnight. This is kind of how Agassiz did his work with his students. So this whole story is about, a cantankerous old professor who used to give somebody a fish and be like, here, learn this. The trick is that he wasn't giving them the entire world of ecology. He wasn't giving them a textbook even. He was giving them something small and tangible enough for them to be able to, like, literally handle it in their hands and to become frustrated and be like, I know there's something here.
But I see the value of that over the solar system, right? Like,
yeah,
right. It's small enough to digest. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, if I tell you, give me an essay on gravitational bodies, you'd be like, you throw your hands up in there and be like, F this, like, no. But if I told you, tell me about, like what would it be like landing a lander on Mars? You'd be right. You'd be closer. You'd be like, okay, this is something small and contained, but interesting. And right before you learn the difficulties, that's when it would start getting cool. Like when you're like, oh, there's no atmosphere. You got to drop things in with like a claw machine crane from space.
Start measuring distance. You have some things you can hook into, right? Start to look up.
Yeah. And the important part is this small little bit of frustration when you're on the edge of being able to answer something. That is also what activates your hippocampus. So like your brain goes into observation mode and record mode right when curiosity is at its peak. So that's something that people oftentimes mistake when they want to teach somebody. If I pull, a child aside and I'm like, I need to teach you about Komodo dragons, I think the way to teach them is to just tell them, is to go up to somebody and be like, hey, let me tell you about, they got bacteria in their mouth. Don't let them bite you. You will have a wild infection. And Komodo dragons can reproduce asexually. They basically make clones of themselves through their eggs. Like, I can tell you all these neat facts, but if I tell them to you, you're not really going to retain them unless they are just the most amazing thing you've ever heard. The way to actually memorize something with curiosity is put it just out of reach. Tell them, hey, if you get bitten by a Komodo dragon, you die, but I'm not going to tell you why. Like, you got to look that up. If you trap a mother Komodo dragon on an island without any males around, she'll eventually have kids. We don't know how. You should probably look that up. So like,
those are both interesting, both true.
Yeah. And that's what this professor did. He would just hand them one fish, a problem that's small enough for them to solve, and just be like, okay, now think about it. What am I missing?
That volleyball lob, though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really good teaching. Right?
Yeah. And that's the trick, is a little confusion, hitting that sweet spot of a little confusion means you get the maximum amount of dopamine before you get the answer. So like, getting that sweet spot is where you want to be as a teacher. And that's a tough balance. If you're a parent and you're like, how do I teach my kid to be curious? It's hard to consistently be able to lob them those softballs to be like, here's the little thing you should be figuring out. You got to make it interesting enough that they can figure it out, but like small enough that their mind can contain it and work on it. And just think of the fish. Like, that's it. Is Agassiz, yeah.
The lecture, what you were saying about, and Agassiz, all credit to him, to be looking at where the world was going is a rare trait too. I'm teaching the future, and I think a lot of times, especially with professors, right? They're teaching the past or what they've always done, and this is how it's always going to be.
Yeah.
And he saw it with classifications and everything moving that way to think forward.
Right. This is going to sound weird, but it's almost like the age of AI, where he was like, what I'm being paid to do here as a professor is I'm being paid to teach these kids facts about fish, or facts about ecology, facts about just how animals and plant life interact with each other. What he knew about the field was pretty soon all this stuff is going to be on museum plaques and, like, in textbooks. He's like, none of this stuff is going to be necessary for them to know in 10 years. What will be necessary for them to be able to do is to be able to examine something for hours on end without getting bored, and be able to, write a dissertation on a dead fish in front of them, or whatever small, stupid, boring thing is in front of them. They're going to have to learn to be curious about it in a way where they can break it apart mentally, learn its systems, its structures, and repeat that to somebody in a way that's understandable. So what we're doing when we teach somebody curiosity, we're not giving them facts. That would be very, very simple and kind of boring. We're trying to teach them what teachers call the productive struggle. It's something designers know, and it's something that coders know, and anyone who's solved a puzzle. Like, if you sit and you love Sudoku, or you sit and you love puzzles, you like watching Wheel of Fortune, your brain does love a challenge, believe it or not. Even if you're kind of a boring person, even if you're just like, I only watch sports and I barely even, I barely even have a heartbeat when it comes to anything that is curious or engaging about, textbook knowledge, learning. I believe that your brain still loves a challenge. That, if you believe you can beat that challenge, then your brain is like all in. You'll throw your chips in.
I got one for you because I could see a little sarcasm in your voice. Like, watching sports is the biggest waste of time ever. I don't appreciate that. That was a little bit passive aggressive, but let me take that from you.
Yeah.
So the NFL, they had a big thing with concussions, and they made a movie about it. Will Smith made a movie about concussions. And so all these sports fans got interested in how the brain works because of their famous football players missing games. So people were my meathead buddies were talking to me about different parts of the brain, and how they're developing the helmets to cave in as opposed to take the and that's exactly what you're saying. They took something where it wasn't really what they found, something that was interesting to them, and then took it to the next level.
I remember recently they changed the rules on how long a pitcher could wait before they have to throw the ball.
That's right. Yeah.
And so suddenly
games were taking 5 hours. They said, okay, we're going to have to.
Right. So I was watching the Texas Rangers with my in-laws, and like my father-in-law is like describing, he's like, okay, you have to maximize the amount of rest time between pitches for them to regain their wind, but you don't want to rush things, and like you have to make it at least a little bit unpredictable for the batter, and like, so there is so much strategy and so much curiosity that went into it. And it was like I'm bashing on sports, but honestly I'm saying that anybody can learn to be curious in a way where, like, it will hyperspeed your brain for that one subject for a brief period of time. And it will not feel like you're learning. It will just feel like you're doing something engaging and fun. And I do bash on sports sometimes, but I do follow some sports sometimes because it's interesting.
Social tax with the father-in-law, we'll call it.
Yeah. And anything written by Michael Lewin, I will read, even though he frequently writes about sports. So, but he focuses on the numbers, which is probably why my boring interests follow it. But we already said the important part out loud, which is if you can juice your curiosity while you learn something, the answers will stick with you for life. There is kind of like a well-known fact in like, learning and development, which is you probably retain about 60% of everything you hear and read, fact-wise. Like, and that's just passive. Like, if you listen to an audiobook, if you read something while you're sitting on the couch or the toilet, you'll probably pick up and learn about 60% of it. I know a lot of people think they pick up everything. They're like, if I read it, I learn it. And then there's other people who go the opposite way. They're like, I read that book, I don't remember anything at all. It's in one ear and out the other. But in reality, most people can bank on about 60% sticking. If you juice your curiosity, that number goes up, or at least you'll be able to stick with it longer. You'll be able to, like, follow through to the end of the book. You'll be able to, read to the end of the chapter if you get yourself curious. And like I said, your hippocampus will do the work for you. It'll start activating those long-term parts of your memory, and it will fix those facts in your brain for you. Because honestly, it's the end of the trivia. Like if you're sitting there watching Jeopardy and you're like, I freaking know this answer, like, and you're almost getting angry because you're waiting for them to finally say the answer, and they're hemming and hawing, and they're going back and forth. Somebody else hit the buzzer and you're like, come on, just say it. If you get to that mode, if you get to that kind of frothing moment for the answer, you're not going to forget that. That is going to become etched into your brain faster than almost anything else you can do. You don't need flashcards. You don't need to do any of the tricks where you set your password to this thing that you need to remember. Just make yourself curious for it, and it'll stick. It'll happen. Now I kind of want to get to why living online sabotages this. And I'm gonna sound like a Luddite. Like I'm gonna sound like one of those complainers that's like, cell phones are ruining teenagers. Online life is ruining our learning. It's making us all soft. But
grumpy middle age.
I know I'm sounding the most middle aged I've ever. But I think it was either last recording or a couple of recordings ago, you and I talked about what's wrong with informational videos on YouTube these days. You mentioned, like, is this, why is my attention span getting worse? I can't sit through a 20-minute video. And I fought back on you. I said, oh, it's because the algorithm rewards for videos that don't have actually much information. If I watch an old episode of This Old House where I want to learn how to like rebuild a house, or if I watch a video about like a Ken Burns documentary and I want to learn about the Civil War, you get so many more facts in a short amount of time. like watching a YouTube video is like, they start with the most important part first that will kind of get people to pay attention.
The hook.
The hook. And then they will have 5 minutes of filler after that hook that doesn't do anything. Like it's a slow drip of information to keep you listening and engaged in their content. So what that means is that the internet kind of gives us novelty without depth. If the most bang for your brain buck is to get yourself curious about something, go look up the answer, get excited for the answer before you learn it. And then afterward, you just sort of sit there, take a breath, and you're like, I can't believe that. That's crazy. I need to share that later. The internet does the opposite. You scroll, it gives you answers without context. Like if you're on TikTok or if you're on Reddit or something, it front loads the answer. It's like, this is a thing. And you're incentivized to click on it and look at like a physical graphic of what it's telling you. You're like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then you move on. That's it. That's the process.
I can't. This is so true, and I've talked to you about this. The last 2 years I've been working to improve my voice, and I started taking singing lessons, and I was so curious about singing that I have probably watched, I don't know, 40 hours, probably 150 hours of YouTube videos about singing people, and out of all those, none of them have any value. You learn less. You like, it's right. Like literally like you're eating cardboard. You know what I mean? Like,
the best explanation I've ever heard for it.
Yeah, it's like professional singers, and they're just kind of they're talking about this, but nothing really. You know what I mean? It's almost just a production. It's just making loud noises.
Eating
big
cardboard.
Promises.
Yeah. I love that phrase, eating cardboard. Yeah, intellectually, online scrolling is eating cardboard, basically. And there are some websites that are better than others. Like once you find a really good video essayist, or once you find a good website or podcast, then it's all over. Then it's like, okay, they spark your curiosity. They make it interesting for you, and then they give you the answer after you think you know it, and then they prove you wrong or they prove you right. I love it when a good podcast or a good show or a good YouTube video essayist does that. But so few do. Like that's like 1 in 20.
But the ones that do it are like, you do it yourself, who the guy's putting a garage door in, right?
Right.
or he's pulling the carburetor out, but he's actually doing it. It's less of the production and more of the real. And with the singing thing, it's getting right down to just doing the vocal training, the exercises and singing scales. You learn more from that, from just the actual,
Absolutely. I watch a woodworker online, and he will say, here's the different types of wood coating, but chemically something different is happening with each of them, and he'll explain part of the chemical process, but he'll basically be like, now try it, like find out why this doesn't work. And I love that. So there is a word for this when somebody there's a word for when somebody does this badly, or for when the internet gives you an answer without making you curious for it, without really doing any of the, like, they don't just do the work for you. That would be giving them too much credit. They give you an answer in the hopes that you'll click on something of theirs, and then they give you nothing in return. There's no process of learning. There's no curiosity building. It's just, here's your cardboard, chew it for 20 minutes while you're doing the dishes. Researchers call this premature closure. It's they give you enough to make you think you understand it. They don't build curiosity, and basically that just builds in misinformation. Politically, this is what is driving the news media landscape. Is they give you the events on what's going on, but only the headline, basically. Then they give you the opinion you should have, and then they stop talking about it.
Democrats in hot water.
Yeah. This politician says something, says something shocking, or like, this politician is in trouble, and then they say why, but that's it. That's the last thing they say about it. So you don't know the context. You're never curious about it. It doesn't tell you what it means to their career, or what it means to the laws they're trying to pass or anything. It's just, they got in trouble with this group of people. Like, be angry about it. It's the shallowest way to absorb information, and it doesn't just kill curiosity, it slows it down for the subject. Because at that point you think you know it, which you don't. You also think you have the answer, which, I mean, you didn't work for it. And it makes it to where it is so easily digestible, you'll do it by accident. There's so many headlines that I get just because I'm scrolling through, Reddit, where, like, I don't understand any of it, but when my wife wakes up in the morning, is like, what happened in the news today? I can literally regurgitate the headlines. I don't even have to look at them. I'm like, oh, these things happened. And she says, how do you know? And I was like, well, I didn't read about it, and I didn't get curious and look it up. They were there on my Reddit feed. They were stuck to me already.
It just kind of, it's like sticky notes on the side of your face, right? You didn't really read them, like a peripheral vision or whatever. You just kind of said,
yeah, peripheral. No, that is a good way to put it. It's like I rolled a hot dog under the couch, and like it was just, that's the hairs that stuck to it. So yeah, the internet and scrolling and doom scrolling and infotainment scrolling, that is the death of curiosity. It is experts call it premature closure, and that's the kind of information we get. So let's kind of go in the opposite direction. Let's get back on track, and let's talk about how do we build the kind of professional curiosity that Agassiz got his students to build. So first off, your original question, we're going to go all the way back and say, you asked to start this episode's writing, how teachable is curiosity? And I will kind of turn that question back around on you. If you had a kid in your house, or heck, if you had a coworker or a subordinate at work, it's you're the boss, you have a subordinate. How do you start teaching them curiosity yourself? Like, what's your first instinct?
A safe space that they can ask any questions. And, I hate to say it's so corny, but there are no dumb questions. You know how patient you are with a little kid, but you can get real dismissive with adults if you think they're wasting your time, especially if it's work related.
Yeah.
So have that kind of childlike curiosity, and if there's someone asks, be patient and to let them know it's a safe space to ask questions.
That is an extremely good and important first step, and I think you're dead on. Let them know that you will answer, and not just that you'll answer. You are happy to answer. Like
Mhm.
you enjoy answering their questions, not in a way that seems demeaning, like you're not trying to hold it over on them. It's, oh, cool. Oh, you're interested in this too? Oh man, I got some stuff to tell you. Um, and people are generally like that. In Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it says specifically in there to make friends, show an interest in their interests, like ask genuine questions. So like, yeah, not only are you dead on with this is how you create a safe space for someone to be curious. It's also how you get people to be friends with you and to make them sort of build loyalty with you. Um, you can also build this into weekly habits. Like you can do it for yourself and you can do it for other people, which I think is the most important part because I think as an adult, when I meet somebody who is another adult and they're deeply uncurious, they do well, that sounds like a question for the doctor, or they do like your parents where, what did your parents say? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can teach curiosity and you can learn it yourself, and it improves your relationships. Like Dale Carnegie said, it improves your memory, it improves your expertise. And honestly, I think the biggest myth about this is if you learn too much of stuff that is outside your field, then it'll somehow waste your time, and that's just simply not true. Like I've let's see, there's the character in Mad Men, Don Draper, where like his narrow field that he had the most expertise on was advertising, but he also knew that if he knew more about the world around him all the time, like he was reading nonstop about philosophy and psychology, and like throughout the show's lifetime, you can catch him reading political books, fiction. He goes to movies, like he absorbs the world around him. And I always thought that was a very interesting portrayal of a character where it's like, yeah, no, this is the best person in this field who's ever existed, but they're interested in everything all the time.
Isn't
And
that
and
with the real pros? They're looking for that extra edge. Years ago, there was this quarterback academy that was for people who were in the NFL, and it was 8 weeks long, and it was neurosurgeon, specialists were doing this NFL, but only certain quarterbacks would pay the money and go do that 8 week program. And they happen to be the three best quarterbacks in the NFL. And you say, well, they don't need to do that, but they're genuinely that interested, even at the top of their game. And isn't that what makes the niches and the people that's so valuable when you're already one of the best in your field and you still want to get better, kind of like the doctor, the professor in your narrative.
yeah, that is a good example. Do you remember the trend when quarterbacks were going to like ballet classes?
Absolutely.
It was a long time ago. It was
Yeah.
like the 60s, I think. But yes, it's to answer your question, I absolutely believe that. It's if you take an interest in things around you, you will find once you become an expert in something, if you are an expert at your job, let's say, once you start poking around in other fields that are similar, you'll find hacks, you'll find things to be interested in, you'll engage your curiosity, and you'll improve your pay grade. For example, I worked in security, and then I got interested from mall security to camera systems and surveillance and things like that. And I've eventually got bumped up into commercial and corporate security, and then from there I got interested in, okay, what are the laws about recording people, and what are the laws about these things, and why does it work this way? And I ended up getting my PI license, and then during that whole process I was writing, and while writing I was getting into contests and getting into speaking contests, and trying to improve my ability to communicate. And then I ended up basically getting a job as a writer. So like that curiosity, following your curiosity, even if it's tangentially related to your work, will not just make you better at your work, it will slowly, like a Pokemon evolution, you'll work your way into the next job field naturally, instead of having to say, oh my god, I need to go to night school.
This sounds like a book of there are no dead end jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Cesar Millan thing when you were telling your story, where he was just interested in training dogs, but then that led to celebrity dog training, a reality show.
Right.
multi-millions. You know, I mean, they literally, I like dogs, you know.
Yeah, you
I
started
want,
at a very simple place.
but he wanted to learn about dogs and how dogs think and how to train humans. And then he got into psychology of how people think, how they interact with dogs. And so anything like security, dog, anything can get deep if you're curious.
Exactly. So let's go through the process of, let's say that we want to take this advice. We want to become curious about stuff that bores the hell out of us. We want to be able to take a fish out of a jar of formaldehyde, and we want to be able to analyze it. But God damn it, is it too boring to do? So let's start with, how do you train your brain to do these things? First off, step one, we're gonna do this in 3 steps. Step one is name the gap. Um, so in an earlier episode, we had an episode about intellectual humility, like how humbleness is how you grow as a person very rapidly sometimes. Um, humility in the mind, intellectual humility, is the ability to, if I'm telling you, Todd, like, like, I'm just going to take the car in, I've got something wrong with the backup camera, and then I stop and think about it. I'm like, actually, I don't know what's wrong with the backup camera. I don't know how backup cameras work. I don't even know where they connect to. Do the wires run all the way up to the engine or the dash, or do they have some sort of interface? Like, is the computer somewhere under the back seat? Like, when I realize that, like, I'm speaking, but at the same time, my brain has massive gaps in my understanding of this thing, that's the quickest and easiest way to engage a curiosity. Because if you can admit to yourself out loud, I don't know how this works, you've got a good starting point, because you're already talking about something that naturally you're interested in. If I am talking to you in the morning about politics, and I'm talking about how, hey, like, the housing market is terrible. Like, I was like, I don't know why, why are all these houses over 300K when I'm in the sticks? Like, this shouldn't be. And I'm like, well, okay, I actually don't know. I'm complaining right now to you, my friend. Why don't I just look that up? And it would make me more angry to look it up. But that's probably a good thing. That curiosity, that spark right before I know the answer, that's the salivation moment. That is when it's like, it's going to be the most rewarding for you to learn it, and you won't forget it. You'll be sharing this later frequently. Um, that mind the gap, or having a fishing net for your brain whenever you realize you don't know something, that's your sweet spot. That is where you're going to find the things you're already interested in. You're already asking yourself, what is the answer to this? You just don't realize it yet. So, or as Agassiz told his students, look again. And what to stop doing is stop pretending you already know enough. Like, premature certainty is the number one killer of curiosity.
Oh my goodness, I am so guilty of this, Joe.
Me
I
too.
I was one of those people I was those, oh, I've done that before. Oh, I tried that already. And then, there's a big difference between doing something once, being skydiving once, and being a skydiver. It's not the same thing. And
Yeah.
so, and what I've noticed is people who are simpler will dismiss everything of, oh, I know about that. And then people who are more intelligent, or people who teach themselves to be smarter or more interesting, they learn a little bit about. So someone who's simpler will say, they learn one fact about something, think they know everything about it. Other people learn one fact about something and they realize, I know nothing about this.
Yes. I have an example of this from last night. I found myself on a group call where I had an expert in cybersecurity and an expert in programming talking to me. I know nothing about either. And we were talking about computer parts, and I built my computer. I just want to put that out there. I built a water cooled 1080 Ti long ago, years ago, and it's still running. But while we were talking, they were explaining how dual channel memory works, and talking about why RAM prices are going up, and which is important because everything in the world now has memory chips in it. Your car has memory chips, your phone has memory chips, your computer has memory chips, your TV does too. So, like, absolutely every piece of electronic technology right now, because there is a supply line disruption. If you haven't yet, Todd, I mean, I'm literally mean this. go out and buy your next phone early, go out and buy your next computer early, because they're going to be up in price for the next 2 years. And while talking about this with them, my wife stopped me, and because I told them, I was like, I know nothing about computers, guys, please educate me. And my wife was like, you built your computer? I was like, I am a plumber basically compared to these guys. Like I plugged things into a socket based on an IKEA instruction. These guys actually know how, why you need your two memory slots, and why two sticks is better than one, because dual channel memory. And I was like, I know none of these. I'm parroting words. I would rather listen to these guys fill those gaps for me, because I almost know the answer. And that spark where I almost know the answer is where the sweet spot goes. That's where curiosity goes.
Your guys are looking at you like, I remember when I had my first beer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's like Steve Martin's old joke. Like he used to say that when somebody would start talking about shit they didn't know, he'd be like, I remember when I had my first beer.
It's all ball bearings, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, identify your gaps. Feed your curiosity through that, because that's where you'll naturally find where you're already curious. Step 2, do the one more look. So this is where Agassiz would go back to his student and be like, oh, you think you know this fish? You've identified it has 2 eyes and a spine. Look again. Literally tell yourself, look again, like the old professor. Take something that's mildly frustrating, like an article or a chart, or a disagreement, and then force yourself just to do it 10% longer. It may be boring, because you may be like, I have read this article, or I have looked into this issue. This political thing that people are raving about today in the news. I've literally read the article about it. I don't care anymore.
Or I got one for you too, Joe. A
Yeah.
complaint at work. Anyone listen to our show is probably a supervisor or somebody at work. And so when you get a complaint at work, as opposed to just trying to knock it down as and dismiss it as silly,
Yeah.
take some time and think about it,
Yeah. That's a very good example. And likewise, don't close the tab in your computer every time something confuses you. Confusion or just a little bit of boredom before you reach the end of the article, that's not a sign to quit. That's not your brain telling you, okay, I'm bored, which means you've got everything, move on. That's your brain telling you, do a couple more push-ups at the end of the workout.
Yeah. You're just fatigued. You're fatigued. Yeah.
And the more you are able to do that, and it doesn't take much. It really is just 10% more. Look again. And doing that look again will build the muscles in your brain. Like you'll be able to. Somebody asked me once, they're like, how can you sit and read these articles for so long? I'm in the process right now of Todd and I have written a book, and I'm doing the fact checking section with help online. And I worked on it for about 12 hours day before yesterday. And my wife was like, how can you do it for that long? And I was like, well, I used to not be able to. Like I had to do the 10% more. I would only be able to read for an hour if it was a dense article, or maybe even not that, especially back in high school, maybe 30 minutes. And eventually over time, doing that 10% more, those couple more push-ups at the end, it built the resilience to be able to do that. Like I can go grab a coffee and eat and then come back and just sit down, and it feels natural now. It's just, yeah, I'm curious about this. I still want to know about this. So yeah, if it doesn't matter what phase you're at with that, you can have a very small stomach for, learning dense things or maintaining your curiosity. But if you can learn to do 10% more at the end of it, that's very valuable. And the last step of this is earn the answer. Now what I mean by this is, have you ever been sitting out to lunch with, friends or your spouse? Somebody asks a question that you should know, but instead of thinking on it too hard, you're like, oh crap, I know that one. You pull out your phone and you start looking up the answer.
Yes. More than I should.
I do that with historical facts.
No. I've been trying not to, actually. No, it's funny you say that.
Wait. Okay. Why? What made you stop doing that?
Because No, I have been trying to do this. I give myself a half a day, and then it'll come to me later. And I'll say, oh, and it feels it's exactly like the feeling of the Jeopardy when you get that question. And no, so there was 50 questions. You answered 2 of them on the show, but you walk around the rest of the day thinking that's your Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
I thought I remembered. And it's usually something small like a song or somebody I used to work with, or just it's a name or and I don't want to look it up. I don't want to ask them. I'm just going to remember later.
That is exactly what I'm talking about, except half a day is crazy. I can't last that long. If I can't come up with the answer in like the next 5 minutes, I will look it up. I'm impatient. But they say on here that like give yourself about a minute. Like if you are struggling to answer a question, you learned it at some point, your brain has it cached, like you have it in the filing cabinet somewhere. Do not pull out your phone and look it up immediately. Give yourself another minute or 2 of really hard thinking. Really try to reach for it. This does 2 things for you. One is that it keeps your curiosity up. I know it feels frustrating, the productive struggle. But the problem is, once you look something up and you get the answer in a search bar, your memory retention plummets. Like having to rewire or strengthen the wires in your brain that lead to that fact, it makes your brain retain it better next time. Like that fact will be easier to access. That bit of information will be easier to find. And the same thing with the facts around it. If I struggle really hard for like a full 60 seconds to remember the scientist who invented like cognitive behavioral therapy, or if I struggle to remember, like, oh God, who brought up the time limits in pitching for baseball nowadays. If I really have to fight for that, everything around it in a small cluster will also sort of be easier to remember next time.
Kind of gets supported, right?
It's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is, so if you look it up, you won't remember. If you fight for the answer mentally, you will remember that, and you'll remember other things better. Like it strengthens the muscles.
Do you know what this reminds me of, Joe? We both had fitness goals and health goals.
Yeah.
It's that difference between I'm just going to work out for this 30 minutes every day, super intensely, as opposed to that I'm going to park the furthest out in the parking lot. I'm going to take the stairs. You know what I mean? It's this really micro working on your brain that really helps. It really does strengthen you.
That is a great way to put it. It's people think that building your brain is sitting down to read a textbook for 30 minutes a day, and that is the oh God, what was that? That's the CrossFit of the brain.
Right.
You just need that and you're fine. What in reality should be happening is to build long-term curiosity and build your brain very well. Be curious and take the stairs every day. Like give yourself as many mental tasks as you can that are casual and already fit into your life and already fit into your curiosity and what you normally would want to know about. And when your brain is struggling for an answer, give yourself an extra 60 seconds to reach that answer before you pick up your phone. Because your dopamine memory response will be better and it will be more effective, before the answer next time. Like as you build these muscles, your curiosity will build too, is what I'm saying. Is your curiosity and the reward for your curiosity will be built up as you work on this and as you improve this in your life. Curiosity does not kick in after an answer. If there's anything we can take away from this, just one fact, it's you don't get the dopamine, you don't get the curiosity after you learn the answer. That's just the reward. And honestly, after you've eaten it like a treat, it's gone. It kicks in before. It is in the anticipation, and it is in grabbing or reaching for that.
It's in the hunt.
It is in the hunt. Yes, that is a perfect way to put it.
You've been listening to The Re-Engineered You. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You mean the world to us.
You can find us at www.re-engineeredyou.com. That's where we have research links, show notes, and feedback.
We're not experts in anything, but we've got opinion on everything.